Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to the Writer's Room. I am your host, Kat, the Night Editor, and with me this evening, our panel of creators.
J.Ishiro, author and alien in a human suit. And right now, if you go to my Amazon, Death War Grease Paint is free for the next 2 days.
And next.
Hey, everyone. Young and Joe. Right now, I am writing a hopefully very epic D&D campaign. Hopefully go into print next year.
Excellent.
And I'm currently Florida woman choking on grapes.
Do we need any further explanation? No, we do not.
I don't know if I want explanation. I have all the questions. Yes, my brain is there. I have a dirty mind this evening, which is very appropriate.
Oof. AKA, try not to make me laugh while I'm eating things. Oh, no.
Oh, God. So,
I'll try not to.
So what is today's subject?
Well, as I was saying, it's very appropriate that my mind is in the gutter because tonight we are talking about when it is appropriate to offend and not to offend the right people.
Or the risks and realities of doing so. And
exactly.
Just for our own story, quick review for all of you who do not know. Kat and I have been running 01 Publishing for, oh, Jesus, it's been 9 years now.
Longer than that.
Longer.
Yeah.
And when we hit the 5-year mark, we were doing great. We were doing amazingly. Kat was really close to quitting her job and going full-time as just a company owner. And then Trump got elected, and Trump derangement syndrome pretty much ruined everything.
Mm-hmm.
We were known as a company that was politically incorrect. We sold ourselves as the no safe spaces company, which meant we would publish the stuff nobody else would. All we cared is if it was well written and entertaining,
mm-hmm.
or at least had an audience.
We had a few rules, but pretty much politics meant nothing. Religious views didn't matter.
And we lost distribution. We lost our press contacts. We lost our industry contacts. Some of the writers we worked with wouldn't speak to us anymore. Not because we had done anything, but just because the woke mob had demanded anything even remotely tied to Trumpism must go and be purged.
No, specifically that we said we're not a safe space.
Yeah, exactly. So that's our experience.
Well, depending on whatever the book's going to be about, you won't be able to please everyone. And depending on the subject matter, well, how accurate do you want to be with something, and what are the expectations?
Well, that's a great place to start. When you are writing, when you are creating your story, creating your game, and you are approaching the tale you want to tell, is that a factor that you think about as far as how big an audience do you want to reach and how few people you want to offend?
Well, that's a good question. And I think the answer to some extent is yes. If you're trying to make the next Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to be a little careful about whose toes you want to step on. And that's the question. Is it all about money for you? In which case, okay, if you want access to those mainstream markets, I can see that. But to me, it's more about, when you're creating something, in a lot of ways, that's your fantasy life. And it's your fantasy life that you're going to share with other people. Why would you want your fantasy life to have the same or more constraints than your normal life? I already have to be careful what I say to my coworkers, not even just political stuff. I just got to be careful to always be, nice and not upset the apple cart. But why would I want my fantasy? Why would I want to sort of cordon off my inner self and inner thoughts to fit this politically correct mold? That doesn't make any sense to me. So in that way, I think it's best just to go for whatever you want to go for. And eventually you are going to find your own audience.
Just that sometimes, depending on the platform, some ways it's easier to find an audience than others, especially Twitter shadow banning people. Like I've seen them just blatantly do something where you can't even share certain kinds of images because the particular account, and it could even be innocent images, but that since that account is shadow banned, that image won't show up in your feed even if you retweet them or requote them. You know.
Oh, for sure.
But that's the whole point of them trying to control what you do via that, because if we don't let you reach all those wrong thinkers, well, no, the whole point is to try to entertain people. Will some people latch onto it? Sure. Other people, they're just there because they want certain kinds of levels of clout, and it's just like meh. I don't care about clout. I just want to have fun. That's why I chose space fantasy. Because I don't have to have a physics degree to make the guns go pew pew. Yay!
Well,
Yeah.
I would argue that the whole notion of I've got to play it safe to make a lot of money, I think that day's past. I really think those days are dead. At this point, whatever earnings you're going to make and whatever notoriety you get, it's going to be at your own risk because they eat their own, and eventually they're going to come for you.
Yup.
You can be J.K. Rowling or, oh God, who else recently said?
But that's another thing though. Even those types of levels of people do have enough money to where they could be like, oh, I have frack you money. But a lot of these entertainment avenues can't create those level of people anymore.
Right.
She truly I think she was lightning in the bottle, you know. Like that does happen sometimes, but yeah, modern entertainment is hanging on by its fingernails. Even with the way the money's pumping through stuff, they don't overall care about the health of the money aspect. It's all about message now.
I could be completely wrong, but my feeling is at this point in time, we're all at the ground level to get in and start something new and great because Hollywood and mainstream publishing and comics have all abandoned their audience. They're free for the taking. We just got to get their attention.
Yeah, I totally think you're right. If you look at culture in general, most of the world is awash in American culture, right? Because our music, our movies, our books have been so strong for the last 100 or so years, 150 years, that it's kind of like a ripple in a pond that goes outward. But what we're seeing now is we've seen Japanese manga has basically taken over the comic book space. Look at Squid Games and all the Korean content. And if we were, let's say, 30 years ago, almost no one would have heard about that stuff because our culture and our content is so strong. But you're right. Since pretty much every entertainment venue in the US has decided to worship at the feet of wokeness, all these other influences from outside are able to come in, which in some ways is very bad, but in other ways is fantastic that now we get to see a lot of new things. And I think you're right. I think we are at a time where if people, keep on trucking on right now and you write your stuff, create your own worlds, that when the sort of the house of cards that Hollywood's built, it's got to collapse on itself at some point. And who's going to be left with original IP that already has a fan base, that already has an audience? It's going to be all of us.
The thing that you'd mentioned is that all of the interesting content, we're turning to Asia now. If we want a traditional hero's journey or superhero story, you've got to look to manga. If you want something that's introspective and tense and has
good superheroes.
Yeah.
They even have baseball or sports manga, like a slice of life thing. So it's like it's stupidly popular over there.
The fact is, we're turning to Japanese and Korean films. We're turning to, Japanese manga. We're turning to K-pop and J-pop are where we're turning for music. That is because we are culturally in a dead period because woke people have gained too much control over our entertainment. And the fact of the matter is, if people really agreed with all this woke shit, nobody would be reading manga. Nobody would be listening to K-pop. No one would be talking about Squid Games because American media would crush it. But the fact that we're talking about what's coming from the Pacific Rim is entirely proof that media here is failing. There's an audience that is not having its needs met, and it's most of the population.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that, sort of to get back to the original point, like how politically incorrect do you want to be? You could think in the short term, like, do I need to make money on my project now? Or do you want to set yourself up for the long term? Being free and saying something that, is, I hate to say from the heart, I don't mean to make it sound like everything is very sissy, but saying something that you find to be profound, other people are going to pick up on that because there's nothing profound going on in the modern media. So it might not be a hit today, but you never know when a few years down the line, people start discovering your work and they're like, hey, I want to see some more of that. And then the audience spreads.
Honestly, the biggest thing at this point is getting normies away from franchises that have supplanted other things in their lives. Heck, at one point, I was like that with certain things because I was searching for my own kind of purpose. I found it. I need more pew pew.
So, for all of you, when you're writing, you're writing your game stories, or even I know you're writing a novels, Yang, to go with your game, your games. Fianna with your stories, Ishi. When writing your stories, I'm sure you've come across a time where something came up in the story where you knew, oh, this is not going to make some parts of my audience happy. How much of that weighed upon your decision to keep those scenes, keep a aspect of a character that you felt needed to be there? How much of that weighed your decision to either keep it or to ditch it or find a workaround?
Here was my workaround. See, since I was so disappointed in so many books having, I probably will mispronounce this again, but Pyrrhic victories, like, where it's like the victory is almost not worth it. Well, that's the reason why I showcase certain aspects of the future in my series. Like, once you get further enough along in the books to where it's like, yes, there is an end point. Here's a little snippet. You want to see how you get there? Well, book 12 will definitely showcase every aspect of that. but I just wanted to kind of sprinkle some breadcrumbs where it's just like, yes, guys, don't worry, I'm not working towards some nihilistic piece of dunk ending, because I'm tired of those.
I would say in my own work, how often have I censored myself? Have I ever?
I know there have been a couple of times where you've ran it through people for a smell test.
Yeah.
Where it's like, are you going too far? Is good writing being sacrificed for bad taste type of things, stuff like that.
Well, for instance, our first book had, all the things you're not supposed to do in mainstream media, including showing needles going into arms. The second book we did a war story that was talking about when war is absolutely necessary at a time when war and anti-war sentiments were popular and writing war stories was not. With Case File Arkham, or with World War Kaiju, I portrayed the I guess white bread, hard-nosed asshole CIA man is the more moral character in the entire book. Also in that book, that was the time when they were trying to get the word rape erased from literature, remember? They just wanted the word rape gone. So I intentionally put a scene in there where I specifically used the word rape to prove a point. And the line was, the building looked like the Starship Enterprise had raped a stack of pancakes. Oof. Nobody had a problem with it.
I mean, I guess it just mostly depends on like what kind of story you want to tell. If your story has more grittier elements, like, you know, say a Black Company type of setup, where it's like a war-torn area, yeah, people are going to expect certain kinds of themes to be interwoven, you know. So I guess it's just really, it's up to the writer whether or not they want to include certain levels of things. Like me, I do have a lot more whimsy in my series, but I also do have a little bit of that cosmic horror element with you know, the Keepers and Unity and all the junk that it tries to do to people. But I also have heroes that showcase like what they fight against. Like, it's simple contrasts sometimes that help work.
Glinda was written specifically as a rebuttal to feminism.
Mhm.
And finally, the one time I did censor myself that I know for I can quote for certain. At the time, this was around what 2008, 2007, thereabouts. There was all this complaining that there weren't any Black protagonists in books that were a positive image or role model. That, you know, they all were, you know, there aren't any Black stars in these kinds of stories, and especially like they're bringing it up in sci-fi. So I said, okay, sure, I'll do it. And I started writing a story. And the moment I said I would do it, I got so much hatred, and I was inundated with so much shit from Black community. I said, you know what, fuck it. You know what? No, not worth my trouble. He's white now. Go to hell.
Yeah, it means I think sometimes even that stuff affects people, like if they're, say, coming from a different kind of community, and it's like, oh, I just want to make this character white. Like, oh, are you self-hating? It's like sometimes some people just want the type of characters they want. I mean, you know, to take like a more mainstream example, like the Dragon Ball Z stuff, a metric ton of people I knew all across the gamut enjoyed it. You know, as far as like it reaching more kind of like a beyond the social media sphere.
Mhm.
A lot of kids liked it. It didn't matter what background it was. I mean, heck, I even saw like on one part of the feed, this one guy wants to name his son Goku, and he said, "Oh, if this gets X amount of likes, his wife will have to name his son Goku Sanchez." I'm like, oh boy, oh boy. I'm just well, to take in my own history. My mom prevented my dad from naming my brother Kirak. So, oh boy.
Oh, my brain is totally fried. What's Kirak from?
I think it was like Star Trek influenced, possible.
Oh, okay.
Not Zorak?
No, but no, my dad just wanted like this kind of futuristic kind of, you know, or / retro sounding name, and my mom's like, no, you will not name our son that.
Your dad sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. It's like, I actually at one point my grandmother wanted to name me Tina, and my mom's like, no, no. Mom was very firm in her convictions. But honestly, I think that's the reason why a whole lot of these ideologues want control of mainstream corpses to feed off of until it's just a shambling wreck, because they do have a cultural touchstone, even though that touchstone's eroded.
So, as a follow-up, have any of you, I mean, Ishii just mentioned his example, but how about the two of you? Have you ever had somebody read something of yours, or had multiple people come back to you with, I'd say, you know, constructive criticism, or maybe not so constructive criticism, and you decided to edit or censor what you wrote?
The only thing that really has happened to me with Uplift Protocol so far is via Discord. Not in most Discords I'm in, but just a handful of friends, or most of them gave genuine feedback, and then some were like, it's just a matter of different tastes. Like one guy wanted things to be much more gritty, and, you know, not as like Silver Age cut, but that's what I want though. I have like a weird juxtaposition of like Silver Age zaniness, you know, space fantasy, you know, Green Lantern / Superman type antics mixed with the Cthulhu level Reaper stuff. Except I won't have a star kid. That star will punt into the atmosphere at the end. Like nope. That's the bonus of having the ending planned out beforehand. Ay.
Yeah, I think for me, it's about am I getting across the message I want to get across? So I certainly will ask people like, oh, what did you think of this? What did you think of that? And if they were like, oh, I hated it because I felt XYZ, and that's what I was going for, I'm like, awesome, I want to keep that in. I don't think there's anything wrong with checking to make sure the message you're sending is the one you want to send. But in particular, I don't think that I've ever really backed off from anything, other than I might de-emphasize it. Like there's one part in my story where a guy, he's writing a diary and he talks about smacking his wife because she deserved it. It's not portrayed as a good thing. And later on you find out exactly why everything like that happened. But some people were kind of shocked. So I kind of, when I rewrote it, it's still in there, but it's sort of like sandwiched in a bunch of other things. So it's not quite as strong. So then as you go through and you discover more about the whole situation, it's not quite, people didn't have the same reaction of like, yeah, I don't want to know anything else about that guy, or that their mind was completely shut off to, oh, he's totally a jerk.
Well, I got a question for Kat. As an editor, have you ever rejected something for reasons of offense?
I have rejected things for being in poor taste. Mainly, they have lit the virtue signals of Gondor all over the pages.
That is offensive.
And
That needs some aid.
I have read stories where it has made me want to vomit when I was done, and I greenlit it.
You published one.
I published one, The Sadist Bible. There's some really foul shit in that book. Some of it literal shit.
And we don't agree with it politically.
No, but that's not the point.
Exactly.
It was well written, and it's a good story, honestly. And so yeah, it being visceral, being offensive, I'm perfectly fine with that. But if you have a message, that's perfectly fine if you want to put that in your works. I know that that's a good part of literature, is sharing messages. I mean, one of my favorite stories of all time, Island of Dr. Moreau. There are some deep messages in that book, some of them not so veiled.
Serious racism.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But that's fine. It's tell a story. Don't beat me over the head with your agenda. And
the soapbox, ham-fisted. Oh, we have to put this in here for people to relate to the person, but they have to be a cardboard cutout at the same time and filled with a whole bunch of cliches. Yay!
Exactly. It's terrible that it's come to this, that I'm actually comparing these two stories. I never ever thought this would happen. It is the huge difference between Man-Eaters and Mom. Both of them, I do not agree with the message in any way, shape, or form. But Man-Eaters is a story.
It's a bad story.
It's a bad story, but it's a story. Yes, does it? Does it have all the subtlety of a screaming brick?
A brick to the face.
But even with the fact that there is first-person narration, there is an actual story going on where Mom is her frequently. I think almost every single page she turns to the camera and talks to you, the reader, and tells you what you should be thinking.
And preachy shit.
And that's the difference. I walk into a comic book store and I giggle like a little girl when I saw that there is a second series of Man-Eaters. Again, not that I think it's a good series. It's not, but it's insanely entertaining, and I almost put down money to buy it. Again, because it is just an amazing guilty pleasure. Where mom, I get angry anytime it comes up in conversation. So
Oh man. But no, there have been some heavy-handed things even from a more right-leaning side too, where
oh yeah.
it's the reason why you'll have a fair amount of the pulp rev people that end up doing Christian fiction, but they do it in such a way where it has Christian mythos and theology in it, but it doesn't beat you over the head. Kind of like the old Narnia books and other things where it had a very westernized Christian worldview, but it's not trying to be like, say, the Christian special Hallmark movie, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you know, but both sides of the fence are guilty of having creators that you know, beat the drum rather than tell a story. Or again, it's also subjective. One person's oh, that's a virtue signal in one way or another, is another person's what, that's nothing. You know, I don't see what you're getting all fussy about. I've had people do that to me who are, you know, more conservative than I am. So, no, I also recognize that it's subjective.
Well, yeah, I mean, because I've come across reviews where I agree with the reviewer, like, oh, hey, I'm tired of, you know, a lot of the big bad guys being, you know, say Christian zealots, when you don't even put that on any other religions, but you seem to single out one as the safe religion to bash in your story. But on the flip side, this reviewer was upset at any kind of display of any kind of same-sex relationships, which I rather have them put same-sex relationships in different characters, not established characters, you know, say like what they're doing with the mainstream, like, oh, everybody's going to be gender swapped, everybody's going to be race swapped. Like, no, at least attempt to make something to where, like, okay, it's not very realistic to where like half your cast of characters in your book are either, you know, gay, bisexual, or lesbian or whatever. That to me isn't as realistic, but hey, it's their book. If you guys want to write a book that has something else in it, you might have to go it on your own or hire a ghostwriter.
Well, then again, it's where is it taking place? I mean, if you have a cast of characters that are all in West Hollywood, yeah, I wouldn't doubt it if almost all of them, you know, were, you know, gay, bi, or whatever. But, you know, if they're in like the sticks of Arkansas, I would be confused.
Yeah, it's just a case of, again, like, what is the reader, what is their ultimately, like, how much of this stuff will overlap with their own personal tastes or wants, you know. It's the reason why certain lines of books will engage me a lot more than others. It's most of it is just different themes and settings and things that I'm interested in, rather than, you know, say, like, I'm not going to force myself to read any kind of more Anita Blake type books. It's like, I can't do it. You know, it causes me brain damage.
Yes, I agree.
So I don't actively go out of my way to hunt down all the floating ad books on Amazon and like trash them. It's like, I am not the target audience for that crap.
No, I just laugh at the back covers, but laugh and just say, like you said, it's not for me.
The back covers are better than the books.
Yeah, they are. Star Storyteller says that she's scared she's going to be a brick writer, I guess, in regards to my comment about a speeding brick. She just hopes that it's entertaining. What do you all have to say about those who are concerned, nervous that they might offend people, that their writing might come out as preachy, or that it might be, you know, worse, misconstrued?
Easy. First off, accept that everyone's going to misconstrue you and misunderstand you and read into it and see things that aren't there, or see things that you didn't see. So don't worry about that. Second, as far as preachy, There's an easy way to avoid that. It's stupid easy, and it's amazing that everyone seems to have forgotten this. Don't write politics. Don't write ideologies. Write morals and values. Write universal truths.
Yep. And you
Yep.
can even see some of this in David Weber's Honorverse, because he'll have characters that are different politically from each other, right? But their core values line up. Like the dissidents in the People's Republic of Haven ended up overtaking their own government and then teaming up with the Manticorans to overtake the real big bad guys that got them all into this mess in the first place. But he does it in such a way where he's not preaching to people. He makes people care about these characters because they have good morals. They understand the true levels of right and wrong, and what's would be considered a war crime, and what is, something horrific in nature. No matter what side of the political spectrum that he places that character or whatnot, he tries to have characters that interact and they understand universal values of, say, basic human compassion. Okay. Yep. Oh yeah. I mean, that's the reason why I've, even though Mr. Weber has so many tech dumps, that seems to be his favorite thing, besides making good characters that you can root for. But once you get past all the other stuff, you just see at the core of it that that's a simple way to make a character air quote relatable to somebody in reality. You just make sure that character has a good moral compass depending on what the story you're trying to tell. Since so many postmodernistic stories focus way too much on amorality and the villain, that's why I tune most of that out. I'm not interested in that.
Well, I think in most modern stories, you can't even tell the difference between a villain and a good guy anymore. I think most of Hollywood and a lot of the popular writers, they don't even know what's good.
Yeah, they're morally bankrupt.
Puppy killer. I will
Sure,
not let that down.
If the puppy was a Nazi, why not?
No, the puppy just happened to be there. But it wasn't her fault. The puppy had to die. All the puppies.
All the puppies.
Oh boy.
She was cold, god damn it.
Yeah.
But
she wanted to get ahead in fashion.
Samuel is correct about this. You're, again, no matter what you do, no matter how much you think you prep, if you don't ever release your book or anything else, you'll never know. Like me, I just released Uplift Protocol because I was the #1 reader for it, and I wanted something specifically that would cater to my zaniness 100%. And that's what that is. And I'm just so happy that I got about 15 regular readers now, and then everybody else is catching up in chunks, because you can watch to see how the stats go up. That's one useful thing about Blogger. It actually showcased when people view things, like what dates. And it's just like, oh, I'm seeing a spike in more readers. So I would say about now I'd got at least 55 of them. That's like about 50 more people than I thought I'd get. So
That's great.
Yep. I mean, in most stuff, most people think like, oh, if I don't sell 100 copies of this, I'm a failure. It's like sometimes you have to look at writing in such a way where I'm looking at it as an investment in myself. Uplift Protocol is basically my passion project that I'm using to teach myself how to write at pulp speed, how to develop things, basically all of it at pulp speed. So that way I can put out 40 to 60,000 word novels or novellas at a pretty decent clip. Eventually I want to break out into other wheelhouses and everything, but for me, it's a long-term investment. That's how I see it.
Star Storyteller says that her problem is her setting is political. So any advice for her on how she can work with that?
Again, I would take a page from Weber's handbook, because he has characters in different political factions all across the board. But give them all some likability factor, like some sort of virtue that makes them stand out from their adversaries. Like say this woman over here is really, I don't know, like maybe she's very, very stubborn, but she's also very generous, with her time or something. You got to try to make sure that the reader sees the value of the character, not in terms of their flaws, even though everybody goes on and on about flaws. Give them one shining virtue that they can embody, that way you can have people be like, okay, I do like this character, even if I don't like whatever political thing they're going to have to run through.
I would say for a political setting, if you're worried about ideologies and politics, follow this one rule. People are what they do, not what they say. Let their actions speak. So, if you have an ideologue that's saying, all this preachy shit, then their actions don't really match it, good or bad. Like if you got somebody who's preaching all this woke bullshit, but then when push comes to shove, they're a human being, that's interesting. I think that's one of the things that Straczynski did before he went woke, is Babylon 5 did an excellent job of that kind of thing.
Yep. Make people care about the characters as characters before you add any other wrinkles to it. Like, at the time, did I understand that Ivanova was bisexual the first time I viewed it? Like, no, because I was a little bit younger during my first viewing. After repeat viewings, other stuff came into play. I'm like, okay, now I understand this. But
well, you remember what is it, Jakar? What was his name? How when he's introduced, he's a stereotypical villain species. He's the least human looking. He's a lizard. He seems to be kind of a schemer, which he is.
Oh man, and he was such a sleazebag to Lita in the beginning, but he transforms into like this warrior poet by the end of the series, and he becomes like a fan favorite.
Well, you realize that he acts that way because he comes from a species that has lived under occupation, and as an occupied people usually are, they have a bit of a self-esteem complex, and he's got his own fight. That was fascinating. Meanwhile, Londo, who comes off as very affable and friendly and the most human of them all, kind of a dick.
Oh, yeah, he dug his own grave there. Veer tried to dig him out so many times. Woo! Woo! But yeah, you can definitely have a story that has some political themes, but make sure those themes are kind of timeless. Kind of like how the fall of Rome happens, where excess goes before a fall. Jakar's big part of his transformation happened when Kosh intervened and said, how many more people will have to die before you wake up? Some might have to be sacrificed, so others might live. I mean, but he did, again, Babylon 5, the OG Babylon 5, because I refuse to talk about any other thing of that, but it's a good case study for characters if you really, because it really is a book on TV. And once you view it a couple of times, especially once you start writing, you'll be able to pick up like, oh, this is a character arc episode, that sort of thing. It's a good example. It really is. Like, it's too bad that he has gone off the reservation. But
we'll just pretend that didn't happen.
yeah, like that's why it's important to have physical media of stuff before everything decided to go into disaster. Oh man,
Yang, do you have any suggestions?
Well, my number one suggestion would be, no matter what the politics of your world, don't make it analogous to politics in our world. Don't make there a president named Donald Trump who
yeah, like
separate it out. And then for whatever political party or faction or however you're dividing it up, people in general will belong to that faction for a few reasons. One is they truly believe it's the best way to go about whatever problem exists in your world. And then you have the other people who are just there for money and or power. You know, so if you understand the type of character you're talking about, it's then a lot easier to make it seem more realistic. You know, like a true believer, they're going to act on the sense that the whatever policies or they're trying to get done, you know, are actually good, even if they're horrific.
I've got an example.
Mm-hmm.
Another great example. Usually, if you're trying to tell us a political story, veil it in something else.
Mhm.
Because, I mean, unless you're really doing some sort of modern day political thriller or something like that, it's better to veil it in like fiction of some sort, either a fantasy setting, which was what Tolkien did with World War II,
Mm-hmm.
or a futuristic setting, which so many Star Treks were. And the reason I say that is a great example was that in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the creators of the show, most of them were Jewish, but they had some really incredibly harsh commentary that they wanted to say about the Jewish, the rich producer Jewish class and the culture that had come up in entertainment and how broken and how fucked up it was. And they created it and told their parables with the Ferengi.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you had told these stories as modern day Jews in Hollywood, they would have all been crucified. They would have been burnt alive. But by veiling it in the Ferengi, there was enough separation that you could do episodes about Harvey Weinstein, which they did.
Mm-hmm.
The Negus is Harvey Weinstein. And they were telling things that were really happening. Another one was they didn't intend this, but it's again another example. They originally intended Bajor to be a metaphor for Israel in the early days. And
Mhm.
they thought they were going to portray them as very heroic. But as time went on, they tried their damnedest. But the fact is, by the end of it, you're kind of like, fuck Bajor. They're a bunch of assholes. You know, I think the Cardassians had a point.
Well, especially with I can never remember his name, the actor who played
Yeah.
Caldecott, juxtaposed with Garrick.
Yeah, and you start to realize, yeah, the Cardassians had their problems, but they had a point. And that scared the writers, and that's why there's certain things at the last season, they're just total cop-outs, because they'd painted
Nope.
themselves in a corner.
You know, now that I think about it, a lot of people who do make pretty decent shows that have some political underpinnings, it's not so much to point and say, like, yeah, this is a current figurehead for whoever's in power, right? It's more like the general ebb and flow of historic events. And then if you kind of study how some of those events came to happen, you can kind of put in like, okay, this is Tiberius Rex and the fall of Rome, but I'm going to set it 5,000 years in the future on some distant world, you know, because most stuff that has political underpinnings will have an internal and external factor that was kind of guided by, say, human history and development. But again, you don't tie it down to any one particular period. You look for patterns in history, so that way you can mimic it, but you don't basically cheaply shove it in there like, oh, this is a problem of current year, like climate change or something. You know.
It isn't real.
Yeah, but just as an example, you know,
Exactly.
Most people who get the political angle correct, like the old school Babylon 5, you have to be a little bit of a student of history and just see how the ebb and flow happened, say, during various conflicts or various political movements. And then you can see what the commonalities are. And then like, okay, I can put that in my story if I want to. You just got to make sure to try not to make it like, oh, this is like how that trope of like, oh, look, it's the Christian church, but evil again.
A for B.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And you can see that as part of the problems with most entertainment today. People are definitely not students of history because they write things and it's like time and time again, history shows us the opposite. So even though, I don't know, I think people almost sort of have an innate sense of something that, this sounds right, it doesn't sound right. So by constantly, going against history without changing the parameters, it makes things seem not as real. You can have a certain political philosophy that you want to promote, but if you're trying to use real world examples and your political philosophy has never produced those results, it's just not going to feel right.
I am reminded of when we were getting Titanium Rain off the ground and we had a movie option. Now, in Titanium Rain, this was written in 2009, mind you. In Titanium Rain, there is a civil war in China where you've got
Who's become the dominant force in the world.
Yeah, who's become the dominant force in the world. And
And
Hollywood.
the U.S. is plagued with riots and division, and is on the verge of splitting.
Well, the U.S. flat out had split.
Well, no, Texas had left.
Oh, Texas had left, but Hollywood was optioning the story, and they were talking to us about their plans for it. And they didn't like the fact that the new emperor of China wanted to take over because, well, damn it, he had the biggest dick in the room and he thought that China wasn't going down the right path and he wanted to steer it in the right direction, which is the history of China. They constantly have guys who come in and say, no, the empire is going down the wrong path, and I'm the man, with the balls to set it straight. They didn't like that. So instead, they wanted to make it about North Korea and how they're put upon by the West and water rights
in the Himalayas. With my classic line, what did I say to the producer?
Have you looked at a map? but there it was. They were trying to, they were going away from reality because it didn't fit their view of the way the world should be working. And it actually had a, quote, bad guy that wasn't the West. It specifically wasn't America. And they wanted to change the plot to fit that agenda.
Yeah, and the bad guy had no good reason other than power.
Yeah.
He did. And why is he doing it? Is he doing it for money, or was he abused as a child? Actual questions.
Question.
No, he's a power mad asshole.
Yeah, and sometimes
just like Hitler and Stalin.
Yeah.
That's the only backstory some villains need. They don't need a tragic backstory. Not all of them need a tragic backstory.
Hell, Mao had one of the farthest from a tragic backstory. The only thing that was tragic about his childhood was that
they didn't kill him.
No, Dad expected him to achieve something with his life.
Little did Dad know.
Yeah, Dad was a governor of a province in China. I know I'm not using the right term, but sorry, I'm calling it a province, a sector of China. And
a mandarin?
No, he wasn't a mandarin. I forget what
Magistrate?
the term was. Like chairman.
Oh, okay.
And he expected his sons, all 8 of them, to be educated and successful in life. He had ideas of what directions he wanted them to go, but specifically since Mao Zedong was a number 1 son, he really wanted him to go into politics. And Mao hated him that he was expected to actually do well in life and achieve something with his life. Like tell me how that makes him. It's just. It pisses me off, that idea of like, well, you can't have just an asshole. They need to have a reason. It's like, well, okay, Daddy expected him to do something.
Ishi, at the time, did you know you were writing the future? Because pretty much everything you predicted is, other than the actual
the same
Civil
way.
Oh, sorry, you were dropping
Well,
out there.
it looks like there might be a little bit of a connection issue.
Oh
But
no.
But let's see. I mean, just depending on how you're going to go about writing. Yeah, no matter what you do, everybody's going to get a stick up their butt about something.
Yeah. Well, think about this. Even in normal books, even if there's not like the woke stuff, more people will not like your work than will like your work anyway. So don't worry about trying to please everyone. Just write something that's good, and the people who are naturally oriented towards your whatever genre and your flavor of storytelling, they'll find you eventually.
Oh yeah, there will be wheelhouse synchronization. Like for me, most times for me to stay engaged, I'd have to say I'd have to be about 60%. Like it has to have tropes I'm interested in, at least one or two likable characters for me personally. And for me, likable means that they are moral, they are just, and they follow their own internal compass to do the right thing, regardless of the situation. And yes, for some people, those types of characters are like static and boring, but to me, they aren't. So no matter what you do, you as the writer have to make sure you're satisfied with what you're doing. As long as you're satisfied with what you're doing, naturally other people will begin to follow along. Depending on your setting and other things you put in, you might have more readers than not. But it all just depends. If you don't invest in yourself first, or even enjoy what you're writing, then how will other people really know that you enjoy what you write? They'll just see you going by the numbers to crank something out, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And, even if you're just not feeling it, people can tell. Definitely in books and in writing. And if you're doing games, you're sort of telling the story on a week by week basis. And if you're just not feeling it that day, people will be like, oh, it's pretty low energy. Is everything all right? And they won't engage with your story.
Yep. I mean, I guess that's the reason why I'm also using Uplift Protocol as my initial springboard, because I want to get this particular mishmash of genres smack dab into there, and the pulps were exactly that. They didn't really overall put themselves in a box of like, this is only this or this is only that. It's like, no, let's cram everything fun in there. Oh, you want space Vikings? That's in there. Oh, you want zombies overtaking a galaxy? Oh, that's in there. Oh, you want space kraken? That's in there. It's like, thanks, space fantasy, the big box of wonder.
Well,
hey,
hello.
they're back.
Yeah, that was weird.
Our internet died.
Yeah.
Oh no, the curse of Florida follows you.
I think it was speaking ill of Mal.
Yeah.
Well, that'll do it.
So, should we call it a night? We've got 7 minutes. So let's do some advertising and promotion.
Shilling?
Shill away. Who wants to shill first?
Let's see. Oh, well, we got to at least shill the hosts, right?
Well, okay. If the hosts are gonna shill first, I will shill the fact that Oh, god damn it!
Death War Grease Paint.
Death War Grease Paint is currently free and will be free till Friday on Amazon. So I will recommend you go pick that up. Also, tell them about Whispers from the Abyss.
Oh, yes. For those of you who may not have already heard, our Lovecraft anthology series, Whispers from the Abyss, now is available in audio form. Select stories from volumes 1 and 2 have been adapted and read by the incredibly talented Lance Roger Axe, who also was instrumental in getting the Titanium Rain audio drama created. Lance has read other things for us in the past.
If you've listened to an audiobook, you've heard him.
Yeah.
He's very prolific.
And especially because he did a Lock and Key for Audible. He did a bunch of things for Audible, and so that is now available again on Audible and on Amazon.com. Check it out.
And please, please, please give it a review because it has Death War grease paint on it, read out loud.
Yes, it does.
And it's great.
It is amazing.
It's an hour and a half long.
And as always, volumes 1 and 2 are still available through Amazon. Just in time for Halloween. In fact, I've had a lot of people come and tell me that in those low periods when you're waiting for trick-or-treaters, reading a page or two from those books really helped. So
also,
I highly recommend.
All the links are in the description,
yes.
including FIANNA'S website.
Oh, excellent. So next.
Well, let's say I have my various flavors of pew pew. But on the blog here, I'll just link it directly.
We love your pew pew.
Pew pew. Yes, and I did recently do some more indie shilling over there, because every once in a while it's like, wait, I must invoke the power of the alternate to mainstream entertainment. No matter what kind of infighting is going on, like whether person is Comicsgate or not. As long as you do comics that have superheroes and cosmic shenanigans, I'm usually there with a bowl saying, please more, give me more. Because suffice it to say, a fair amount of Comicsgate is very influenced by the 90s, but I would say more influenced towards like the early to mid-level Image comics from the 90s. Kind of really big bombastic action.
Yeah.
Where yeah. I want pew pew and courtly romance and the guy getting the space princess, the Flash Gordons of the world, the Barsooms. Like, yes, that's my couple right there. And now I'm going to be very, very bad. And here, let's see, because I have it linked. I'm gonna help Draco here, because he's going zigzag where I'm zigging, he's zagging. So go give Star Warden a try, too.
I don't even know what that is, but go ahead and post it.
There we go. Yes. Still shilling.
You need your own breakfast cereal called Pew Pew Puffs.
Yes, give me awesome. The spaceships. I will eat the spaceships.
The little Malo spaceships.
And it'll make the milk turn into stars. Like, there we go.
Exactly.
All right. Well, for me, this Friday evening, I have the Gary Gygax acolyte himself, the Dungeon Delver, will be on my channel. We're going to be talking about you want to make an RPG campaign. Where do you start off? We're going to talk about how to build a story arc, how to flesh things out. And then we're also going to get into how do you make sure your group is... let's say, problem-free, and somewhat of a continuation from tonight.
Oh man.
Interesting.
Because I can say there was times with the tabletop that I was the problem player, because full stop, it's like once the characters got turned into vampires, my heart wasn't as in it. Like, I liked the general mystery and being the stalwart Victorian dude with morals, and most of the vampire stuff basically meant that there was no more morals. At least for the game I was in. But to the GM's credit, he did try to figure out how to put in my brand of play without derailing stuff. But I know I was the problem, because I wanted to be Clark Kent in the World of Darkness, and I was able to do that as a human, but not as a vampire. Definitely not as a vampire.
Okay, because the people in the chat are mentioning "Let's Go Brandon" for some reason, I'm going to use that as an excuse. For
all the reasons.
to show off this new shirt that I'm selling from our website. So show your support for Brandon. It's the rallying cry of a generation. Let's go, Brandon. All right. Shall we call it a night?
Yeah.
All right. Well, good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us,
Yes.
and talk to you soon.
And Trenton, I'm sorry I hadn't gotten your text message until we had already started the show, so I will be responding to you.